I am Rebecca Dorch, the Senior Spectrum Policy Analyst at the Institute for Telecommunication Sciences, ITS, which is the research lab of the National Telecommunications and Information Administration, NTIA. This video is the introduction to the first series of short tutorial videos for the 2022 International Symposium on Advanced Radio Technologies, ISART, whose topic is on evolving spectrum sharing regulation through data, science, and technology-driven analyses and decision-making. ISART is a U.S. government-sponsored conference hosted by the Institute for Telecommunication Sciences in Boulder, Colorado since 1998. The first series of tutorials focuses on the current U.S. regulatory process to establish spectrum sharing. This introduction to that series provides a brief summary of the dual regulatory authority over the radio spectrum by NTIA and the Federal Communications Commission. Radio transmissions have been regulated by the federal government since the Radio Act of 1912. The first effective regulation of radio transmissions, however, occurred with the formation of the Interdepartment Radio Advisory Committee, IRAC, in 1922. IRAC coordinated government users' use of the spectrum. IRAC still exists today, is chaired by NTIA, includes 19 federal agencies with spectrum assignments, and facilitates spectrum coordination among the federal agencies and liaises with the FCC on issues impacting both federal and non-federal spectrum. The basic role of the representatives appointed to serve on the IRAC is to function when meeting in the interests of the United States as a whole. More information on the IRAC is in the tutorial by Peter Tenhula. The Federal Communications Commission was established in 1934 by the Communications Act of 1934. The Act, as it's often referred to in shorthand, created the FCC as an independent federal regulatory agency directly responsible to Congress, charged the FCC with regulating interstate and international communications by radio, television, wire, satellite, and cable, gave the FCC jurisdiction over radio regulation for the 50 states and territories, the District of Columbia, and U.S. possessions, and then carved out and codified the President's authority to manage the federal government's use of radio spectrum in Section 305 of the Act. Responsibility for management of the federal government's use of spectrum is delegated by the President to the NTIA Administrator, who serves as the President's principal advisor on telecommunications and information policy. In this role, NTIA frequently works with other executive branch agencies to develop and present the administration's positions both domestically and internationally. NTIA is also responsible for performing telecommunications research and engineering, including resolving technical communications issues for the federal government and administering infrastructure and public telecommunications facilities grants. ITS was brought into NTIA in 1978 in order to assure that NTIA would have in-house research capabilities to support data, science, and technology-driven regulation. The responsibilities for managing spectrum have thus basically always been bifurcated, with the NTIA as part of the executive branch managing federal government use of spectrum, and the FCC as an independent agency responsible to the legislative branch managing all other uses of the spectrum. NTIA and the FCC also have complementary but different rulebooks and advisory committees focused on spectrum matters that are organized under the Federal Advisor Committee Act, or FACA. FACAs are comprised of experts from outside the federal government appointed as special government employees that offer expertise and perspectives to the federal agency. I mention this because during ISART, speakers will often refer to the NTIA's Red Book, more formally referred to as NTIA's Manual of Regulations and Procedures for Federal Radio Frequency Management, but also known as the Red Book because of its color. And speakers will also refer to the Commerce Spectrum Management Advisory Committee, pronounced alternatively CSMAC or CISMAC, which offers NTIA expertise and perspectives on a broad range of spectrum policy issues, technologies, and potential reforms. Speakers will also refer to the FCC's rules at Part 47 of the Code of Federal Regulations, the CFRs, or as just the rules. The 47 refers to the title of the United States Code. Now, the printed volumes of the CFR are updated every year, and every year they are a different color. Speakers will also refer to the FCC's FACA on Spectrum, the Technological Advisory Council, or TAC, that helps the FCC identify important areas of innovation and development of informed technology policies. As we begin the discussion during ISART 22 on evolving spectrum sharing regulation through data science and technology-driven analysis and decision-making, one other historical fact to note, which has facilitated spectrum allocations, reallocations, and repurposing, is that the Communications Act of 1934 did not mandate specific allocations of bands for exclusive federal or non-federal use. Rather, the frequency allocations stem from agreements between NTIA and the FCC and international agreements that are reflected in the table of frequency allocations that are contained in both the NTIA Red Book and in Part 2 of the FCC's rules. Up next in this tutorial series, distinguished communications experts will provide background on how specific aspects of the spectrum sharing regulatory process currently work.